$100,000 a year. That's the number most Australians spend their entire careers chasing, and in 2026, it buys you far less than you'd ever expect. Before you spend a single dollar, before rent, before groceries, before petrol, the ATO quietly lifts $26,000 right off the top. And that's just income tax, just that one line. By the end of this video, you'll know your real weekly number, what $100K actually puts in your pocket, and 5 concrete moves you can make right now to keep more of it. Right, so a $100,000 salary in Australia puts you in the 37% marginal tax bracket. Not the top rate, but close enough that every extra dollar you earn loses a big chunk immediately. But here's what they're not telling you. Income tax is just the opening act. There are 4 more deductions lining up before your pay even hits your account. Here's the actual breakdown. You pay 19 cents per dollar on income between $18,201 and $45,000, then 32.5 cents on everything from $45,001 to $120,000. At $100K, you sit squarely in that middle band, ATO 2025 to 26. Most people assume they're losing 37% on everything they earn. That's not how marginal rates work. And that misunderstanding could cost you real money when it comes to investing or structuring your pay. Your actual take-home, after income tax and the 2% Medicare levy, lands at roughly $73,450 per year. That's $1,412 a week, not the $1,923 your gross salary would suggest. ATO 2025 to 26. Now, rent. The median weekly rent for a house in an Australian capital city hit $627 in 2025, up 8.4% from the year before. In Sydney, you're already paying $680 to $720. Core Logic, 2025. At $700 a week in rent, that's $36,400 a year. Nearly half your entire take-home pay, gone before you've bought a single bag of groceries. Sound familiar? Core Logic, 2025. Think about it. $73,450 take home. Rent alone swallows $36,400. You've burned nearly half your annual income on somewhere to sleep. Half, before a single other thing. Groceries for one person run $200 to $260 a week in 2025. For a couple or small family, you're looking at $420 to $540 weekly. That's your Woolies run, your fruit shop, and your Aldi top-up combined. ABS Household Expenditure Survey, 2025. Electricity and gas averaged $2,016 per household nationally in 2024, roughly $168 a month just to keep the lights on and the hot water running, before you've watched a single episode of anything. AER 2024. Petrol averaged $1.92 per liter in metro areas through 2025. Fill a standard 55-liter tank and that's $100 to $5 gone, and most people fill up at least once a week. That's $5,460 a year just on fuel. RASIQ Fuel Watch, 2025. Get this wrong. Keep assuming $100K is comfortable, and it could quietly cost you $78,000 in missed optimization over the next 10 years. The maths is that brutal. Let's stack the numbers. Take home, $73,450. Rent, $36,400. Groceries, $11,440. Utilities, $2,016. Petrol, $5,460. You're already down to $18,134 for literally everything else in your life. ABS Plus Core Logic 2025. That $18,134 has to cover your phone plan, car insurance, streaming services, clothing, haircuts, and any debt repayments. We haven't even mentioned savings yet. Crazy, right? Now, this is going to make some people genuinely uncomfortable, but the numbers don't lie. Living a standard, comfortable middle-class life in Australia now costs upward of $120,000 a year. Properly. Here's the plot twist you weren't expecting. The $100K salary is essentially the new $70K salary from 2015. Real wages haven't kept pace with inflation. Not even close. RBA, 2025. Between 2020 and 2025, cumulative CPI hit 21.3%. For your purchasing power to hold steady, your wages needed to match that exactly. Most Australians received about half of it in actual pay rises, ABS CPI 2025. If you've ever paid your bills and genuinely wondered where your money went, you're not bad with money. You're up against a system that's been quietly repricing everything around you for 5 years straight. Here's something most people completely miss. Your super contributions get taxed too. Your employer pays 11.5% super on $100K, that's $1,100, but it's taxed at 15% inside the fund before it even starts growing. April 2025. So your super only grows at 85 cents for every dollar your employer contributes. That 15-cent gap compounds invisibly over a 35-year career into tens of thousands of dollars. Silently. Most people guess their super will be enough to retire comfortably. The actual median super balance at retirement in Australia? Around $207,000 for men, $148,000 for women. That's not comfort, that's survival mode. ASIC Money Smart 2025. Right, let's talk housing, because this is where 100K gets absolutely punished. To buy a median-priced house in Sydney right now, you need a deposit of around $250,000. $250,000, just to start. Core Logic 2025. Saving $250,000 on a $73,450 take-home, even with a partner on similar pay, takes 7 to 10 years of consistent, disciplined saving. No overseas trips, no car upgrades, zero financial surprises. Core Logic plus ABS 2025. Here's how that compares to the 1990s, and the difference will genuinely shock you. Back then, a median house cost around 3 times the average salary. In 2025, it's over 9 times. Same country, different game. If you borrow $115 million at the current variable rate of around 6.3%, your monthly repayments are roughly $7,150. That's $85,800 a year on a $73,450 take-home. You'd need a second income from day one. RBA 2025. Wait, $85,800 in mortgage repayments on a $73,450 take-home? You'd be $12,350 in the negative before buying a single loaf of bread. The numbers literally do not work without 2 incomes. Phone plan, $55 a month. Private health cover for a single, $170 a month. Comprehensive car insurance, roughly $1,400 a year. These invisible costs quietly total $4,360 annually, and most people never consciously track them. April plus comparison data, 2025. Carrying $10,000 on a credit card at 19.9% interest burns $1,990 per year. Just in interest. Not reducing the balance, just keeping the bank happy. That's your Rego, your phone plan, and your gym membership. Gone. RBA 2025. Before we go further, pause and genuinely ask yourself, do you know your actual weekly take-home down to the dollar? Most people I talk to are off by $100 to $200 every single week. That adds up to thousands a year. Here's something that'll genuinely mess with your head. On $100,000, you're in the top 12% of Australian income earners. Top 12%. You're out-earning 88% of this country, and you still can't comfortably buy a house in any capital city. ATO data 2025. HECS debt hits hard too. The average outstanding HECS balance in Australia reached 24,170 in 2024. In one single year, indexation added 4.7%. That's 164s added to an average debt overnight without a single dollar borrowed. ATO plus HECS 2024. At $100,000, your compulsory HECS repayment rate is 6%, automatically deducted. That's $6,000 a year. So that $73,350 take-home we mentioned, if you have HECS debt, your real starting point is $67,450. That's the actual ground floor. ATO 2025 to 26. So for many Australians in their 20s and early 30s earning $100K after tax, Medicare levy, and HECS, you're genuinely living on closer to $67,000. That's your real starting line, not the headline number. And if nothing changes, same job, same salary, inflation keeps running, you'll need to be earning around $118,000 by 2030 just to match today's purchasing power. The clock is already ticking. RBA Inflation Forecast 2025. No, seriously, if you have kids in childcare, it gets even tighter. Average out-of-pocket childcare costs for one child after the childcare subsidy still land at $12,000 to $16,000 per year. Still. Department of Education, 2025. Right, so what can you actually do? Start with salary sacrifice into Super. On $100K, putting an extra $5,000 into Super costs just $3,250 out of pocket after tax savings. That's a guaranteed 35% return before your fund invests a single cent. ATO 2025. Second, claim your tax deductions. Work from home costs, professional development, union fees, work tools. The average Australian leaves $200 to $2,000 in legitimate unclaimed deductions on the table every single year. ATO 2025. Third, if you're renting solo, consider a housemate. Splitting a 2-bedroom apartment saves $200 to $340 a week compared to a solo 1-bedroom rental in the same suburb. That's up to $17,680 back in your pocket per year. Real money. Fourth, reframe discretionary spending in hours worked, not dollars spent. That $120 restaurant dinner? At $100K gross, after tax, that's nearly 2 hours of your working life. Sometimes it's worth it, but you should be choosing it consciously, not accidentally. Fifth, don't voluntarily smash your HECS ahead of schedule right now. The effective interest equivalent is lower than most diversified ETF returns over time. Take that cash and put it into a broad ASX ETF instead. Let compounding do the work. Look, none of these are silver bullets on their own, but stacking 3 or 4 together, that's how you claw back $8,000 to $15,000 a year without waiting on a pay rise. Actual, measurable progress on a $100K salary. And I get it, this is genuinely hard to sit with. Earning a salary that used to signal freedom, and realizing it now means just keeping your head above water. That's not a character flaw. That's 2026 Australia. The system hasn't caught up to the cost of living you're actually experiencing. But sitting here, understanding these real numbers, that already puts you ahead of most people around you. The honest truth? $100,000 doesn't stretch the way it once did in this country, but knowing exactly where every dollar is going and having a few real strategies in your pocket changes the game entirely. Survivable. And with time, genuinely better than that. If this helped you see your salary and your actual situation more clearly, hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps this channel reach more Australians who need to hear this conversation. Comment below right now. What's your annual salary bracket? Round numbers, zero judgment. Under 60K, 60K to 90K, 90K to 120K, or over 120K. I genuinely want to know what you're working with so I can keep making videos that actually apply to your life. Subscribe to Sense AU, and not just because I said so. The next video breaks down how to combine salary sacrifice, an offset account, and a simple ETF strategy into one system. That combination is the one that actually moves your number. See you there.